Women Engineers chapter. I'm very excited to introduce our presenters today. So we have 6 alumni from the Lyles College of Engineering with various backgrounds and majors in the industry. And so I'm going to briefly introduce them to you. You'll be able to see their bios on the slides on your screen, hopefully. And so first off, we're going to introduce Becca Cartier. So Becca was born and raised in Fresno, California, and graduated from Fresno State with a Bachelor's of Science in Mechanical Engineering and a minor in Physical Science. After graduation, Becca gained renewable energy engineering and production experience with General Electric in Tehachapi, California, aerospace flight test engineering and supervisor experience with Jacobs Technology at Edwards Air Force Base in California, as well as medical device production and quality audit experience while working at Sunrise Medical in Fresno, California. Next, Becca co-founded a company called Hermetia Pro prior to becoming the chief engineer for Soldier Fly Technologies, both of which share a mission to produce sustainable insects to feed the world. And so our next panelist is going to be Cameron or Cami Hurst. She studied electrical engineering and Becca studied mechanical. And so Cameron studied electrical engineering at Fresno State, graduating with a BSE in fall 2019. While at Fresno State, she was a member of the Unmanned Aerial Systems team and performed research related to unmanned aerial vehicles, also known as UAV. Outside of school, she interned with Toyota Motors of North America, designing and testing multimedia systems, cockpit engines, and fuel cell vehicles, or cockpit electronics, my bad, and fuel cell vehicles. Since graduating, she has worked as a hardware engineer for Cisco Systems Incorporated, designing systems that power the internet. So next slide, please. And so our next panelist is Alejandra Marvia. Her major was construction management. And so she was the middle child of 3 daughters and the first to pursue a career within the engineering/construction industry in her family. The Central Valley is now her home, and she is part of the CP1 high-speed rail team as an owner's rep. Her career started at Fresno State and she graduated in 2016. During her time at Fresno State, she had 4 internships, participated in AGC and ASC Region 7 competitions, and is now working as has worked as a general builder and as an owner's rep within the commercial and heavy civil industry. And our next speaker is Kiana Nagoro, who had a civil engineering major. And Kiana graduated from Fresno State in December of 2014 with a bachelor's in civil engineering and minor in mathematics. Since then, she has worked at TRC, where she designs bridges, retaining walls, and performs construction inspections, and obtained her professional engineer license in December of 2017. She also currently serves as the Fresno Younger Member Forum President for the American Society of Civil Engineers. Next slide, please. And so our next panelist is Haya Kotib. Her major is civil engineering. And so Haya Kotib works for the city of Clovis as an engineer 1. She recently graduated with her master's degree in civil engineering from Fresno State. During her time at Lyles College of Engineering, Haya was very involved. She was an officer for multiple clubs, the ASI LCOE senator, as well as the instructor for Soils Engineering Lab. Haya loves to represent women in engineering. And our final panelist is Charlotte Schwartz Doyle, who has a mechanical engineering major. She got her BS in mechanical engineering in 2020 from California State University, Fresno, and is working on her master's in data science and analytics, expected to be 2023, from the University of Missouri, Columbia. And she has worked at John Deere in a variety of positions. As you can see, she's very qualified. She also has several organization involvement, such as with the Society for Hispanic Professional Engineers, or SHIP, as a national convention recruiter, also with the OLA Employee Resource Group and the steering committee for the community. And she also has worked with the Society of Women Engineers as a national convention recruiter. And so we're very excited to have these panelists today. Please welcome them. We're very excited to hear them answer our questions. And so we do have some predetermined questions that we will be asking each of the panelists, going over their backgrounds, their current status within their field, and how their experience has helped them through their academic and professional careers. And so we're going to go through these questions, and then we'll open it up to you, the audience. And so please submit your questions through the Q&A or through the chat, and we will address them as we go through the presentation and at the end. And so with that, we're going to start with our first question. And so you can stop sharing the slides now so that we can see all of our wonderful panelists. And so our first question is why you picked your major. And so we can start with Alejandra, if she would like to go into a little bit about why she picked her major.
Let me unmute it. Okay, so I originally picked it because I wanted to understand the fundamentals of engineering. I didn't put this in the bio, but I was originally a civil engineering student, and I'll just go a little bit more into detail since we have high school students attending as well. As a high school student, I didn't know what construction management was. All I understood was civil engineering, and in high school I had taken shop classes, and that's why I wanted to do engineering. And as far as once I got into the design courses, I realized as much as I love engineering, I didn't want to design my whole life. And that's when I went to Fresno State has a lot of outreach and mentors, and that's when they guided me into construction management. And that is basically how I picked it. So being able to understand the fundamentals, but also understanding the constructability of being able to bring those drawings that the designers put together to life. And that is why I picked it.
That's amazing. And so going in a little bit of an opposite direction, Cami, would you like to go into a little bit about why you picked your major?
Yeah, so it's funny you say going in a little bit of an opposite direction. My path was a little bit opposite of Alejandra's. So growing up, my dad was a contractor. And so I spent a lot of time on job sites and running around buildings that were just like studs, right? So running through walls before they were actually walls. And when I was there, I was just enthralled with the different aspects of homes and that design process, right? And then when I was looking at, so at that point I decided engineering was for me. And then I was looking at the list of majors and kind of, I like a challenge. So multiple people told me that electrical was one of the most difficult. And so I was like, okay, I'll take that one. And then I stuck with it, and here I am today. So.
Always fun to take on the challenge. So Haya,
Yeah.
would you like to go? Yeah. Haya, would you like to go into a little bit about why you picked your major?
So growing up, I always loved building Legos, and as an adult, I still like to build Legos. I've always known I wanted to do something related to engineering. As an elementary student, I didn't know the different aspects of engineering, but I wanted to do something that has to do with buildings. When I picked civil engineering specific, it kind of just, I randomly, not randomly, it caught my attention compared to all the other engineering majors offered at Fresno State. So I just picked civil engineering, and then I fell in love with it, with the fact how broad it is and all the opportunities I would have in my future. So that's the reason I picked civil.
That's awesome. I think you won't find an engineer that doesn't love to play with a good Lego set these days, or even growing up. So Charlotte, would you like to go into a little bit about why you picked your major?
Sure. For me, it's a little bit different. I'm from Colombia. And when I was in Colombia, I took a lot of different science classes. I wasn't sure what was engineering, even though my grandfather is a civil engineer. When he passed away, he was little, so I didn't have a role model. I didn't know what was, like, engineering was a thing for girls. So my background was biomedical physics. And when I started my classes at Fresno State, I started taking math and physics with engineers. And I started like having study groups with them, and I started looking at what they were doing. And I started liking what they did, right? Like some classes. And I'm like, I think I picked the wrong major. And I remember going to Dr. Hapawana office and looking to, oh, maybe I can be an engineer. It looks so interesting. You can do so many things, help the communities. I just start like investigating more and more and more. And I find out that, yeah, engineering actually is not boy or men stuff. It's also anybody. and that's how I started like, okay, I'm gonna start taking some classes. And I choose mechanical engineering because for me was the versatility that you can work in anywhere. You can, and I can share a little more during this meeting, but you can be a mechanical engineer and work in design. The next day you're doing electrical stuff too, and computing and programming, and that's what I choose mechanical engineering, since I didn't have a specific place. I just like science, and yeah, that fit perfect.
Awesome, thank you. Kiana, would you like to go into a little bit about why you picked your major?
Okay. Hello. So I think my path might be a little more stereotypical to what people would expect of engineers. From a young age, I always enjoyed and like excelled at math. And so I'd be like taking the advanced math courses. And I even participated in the math team from like 7th grade through the end of high school. And so when I got to college, engineering was kind of the most natural fit because I wanted to continue doing math, and I also got my minor in math. But then I realized that I didn't really like theoretical math, but I loved like applied mathematics. And so that's what rolled me right into engineering. And then so I got to learn about real world applications of math and also problem solving, and then just like the bigger picture of civil engineering. And then also it did help that my father worked in civil engineering too. So among all of those factors, I ended up in civil and I love it.
That's amazing, thank you. And last but not least, we have Becca, if you'd like to go into why you picked your major.
Yes, so I'm a little bit opposite of Kiana. I actually did not like math growing up, which I guess is kind of different for an engineer to say. I wasn't awful at it, but I wasn't something that I enjoyed. I really liked science. So I spent a lot of time thinking about what I wanted to be when I would go to college. And I narrowed it down to 3 things before I got to college that I was going to be. I was either going to be an anthropologist because I wanted to dig up dinosaurs all day. I thought that sounded great. I wanted to be a kinesiologist because I love playing sports and I thought that that would be fun. Or I wanted to be an engineer because engineering is that one degree, in my opinion, where it opens up a world of options. If you have that degree, you can be just about almost anything. Maybe not a brain surgeon with that degree, but just about anything. So I went to college and I actually stacked up my first semester of classes where I took a bunch of anthropology courses. I took a bunch of physical therapy courses in engineering. And I learned a lot that first semester. First, I learned I did not want to do anthropology. I went to my anthropology classes and they spent a lot of time thinking about, why does this culture part their hair on the left, but this one on the right? And I don't know that I could care less. So I said, that's not going to work out. I went to my physical therapy classes and I liked the physiology anatomy parts of it. I liked the science part of it. But when it came time to actually work with people, you had to answer, like they would come in, they go, well, my foot hurts. And you go, great, did you ice it and wrap it like I told you to? And they go, no. And I'm like, oh, this is not going to work out. You know, this is not going to work out for me. I'm not sure I should be working this closely with people, maybe. So I decided I was going to go into engineering. And it was a little bit daunting at first because, like I mentioned, math was not my strong suit. So it was something that I had to build up and get better at. But it was definitely something that I enjoyed. It was interesting and it was a challenge.
That's awesome. So I love hearing about how everyone kind of has very like similar, but also different stories. And so leading into that, what about your personal background do you think has helped you excel or kind of branch out within your major? And so we could start with Haya this time.
So like many of the other ladies mentioned, I also really like math growing up. So that was also very beneficial. However, just because I excelled in math doesn't mean I didn't struggle. And I did take advantage of all of the tutoring offered at Wells College of Engineering, as well as whatever is offered for student help. As far as other personal backgrounds, making sure time management, being able to manage my time between studying school classes and everything else was very beneficial. Yeah, I don't know what else to expand on that.
No, that was perfect. Yeah, we always love to emphasize getting help from the Lyles College and from anyone who is able to provide it. So Cami, do you want to go into a little bit about how your personal background has helped you within your major?
Yeah, sure. So I mentioned that my dad was a contractor, right? And that helped me get into engineering itself. What I didn't mention is my mom was actually a realtor. And so when thinking about like personal background, something that I think about a lot is that support network around you and what you can learn and gain from them. So weirdly enough, my mom being a realtor and wanting to talk to everybody and anybody, it's not a stereotypical skill or something that you would expect from an engineer maybe, or in the past you wouldn't. I'd say that a lot more engineers are getting to that point where they just want to talk. But my mom being a realtor really helped me in school reach out to different resources, right? So that ability to just walk up to a stranger and ask for help, but has also helped in the workforce, right? So learning how to balance multiple projects at once, learning how to communicate, whether it's via email, whether it's via text message, whether it's via phone call. These are all skills that I think realtors kind of know well. And I've tried to grab bag, some of those things to use in engineering. So that's how I would say my personal background, my support network have really helped get me to where I am in this major today.
Yeah, that's awesome. Charlotte, do you want to go into a little bit about how your personal background has helped you with your major?
Yes, sure. Since, okay, first of all, when growing up, I really like science and math, but also I was very influenced by my father. He's a businessman, and he always said that we are our own business. We are, so whatever if we want to have a successful business, you have to make good investments. And always we use it, he always referred that to education or something positive in ourselves. So he always said like, hey, if you want to, one of the investments is education, but get a good career, trying to invest in yourself, getting more like not certifications, but learning experience opportunities, right? So I always, that kind of helped me because engineering is not an easy major. So you have to have dedication and remember that this is good for you and it's going to be many positive things, outcomes out of after getting your degree, right? So I remember that kind of helped me to kind of set up and say like, okay, I'm investing in myself. I'm gonna get, even though it's not easy, I can see myself like a business. And that's one thing. The other thing that helped me is that he did a lot of speech. Like he loves talking with people, networking. And I think in this business, networking is key. So get to talk to others, introduce yourself. And that helped me when I was studying. I started talking with other students, creating study group with my peers and classmates. And so I think those two helped me to achieve and graduate and now get a master's. I think that helped me a lot.
That's great. So Becca, do you want to go a little bit into about how your personal background has helped with your major?
Yeah, absolutely. So growing up, I had support from both of my parents, encouraged me to basically tell me I could do anything that I want to do. I looked at my dad a lot too, and he grew up in Fresno, and he was very poor when he grew up in Fresno. He lived with his family in a garage with a dirt floor, and they didn't have anything. And he basically pulled himself up by his bootstraps to become a successful attorney and law professor. And so I knew that if I just worked hard and just kept pushing, even if things got difficult, I could get to where I wanted to go. So that was encouraging. I also did a lot of, like I mentioned, sports. I played music. That taught me a lot of time management. My mom made sure, she was a journalist. So she also made sure that not only was I going to excel in school, she wouldn't let me, not do well in school, but also she made sure that I was able to communicate effectively in writing and in speech, which is important to be successful. So I think all of those things playing together helped me when it came time to pick my major and to succeed in that.
Awesome. Okay, so moving on, if Kiana would like to go into how her personal background has helped with her major.
Oh, sorry. So what I was going to talk about kind of is similar to like how Cami and Charlotte both mentioned like support networking kind of stuff. Because like when I was in high school, I was involved in a lot of different clubs and organizations like math team and CSF and other ones. And so then naturally when I got to college, I sought organizations that I could participate in and like meet other like-minded people. And so when I got to Fresno State, actually, I think it was the first week I was there, I joined the American Society of Civil Engineers, or ASCE. And I've actually been active ever since. That's the organization that I serve as president for the Younger Member Forum for right now. But anyway, so during my time at Fresno State, I was involved with ASCE and SWE. I see your background says SWE, Haley. And then Tau Beta Pi and Chi Epsilon, which are like the honor societies. And so like between the different organizations that I was a part of, I was able to meet a lot of other students who were also like involved, and they were also very motivated. And so we would all like study together and do homework together or whatever, and just help each other succeed. And I think that really helped me get through my time at Fresno State.
That's awesome. So now, Alejandra, if you want to go into how your personal background has helped with your major.
So originally I had said I didn't think anything had helped me, but after listening to what everyone's saying, I think it just kind of gave me a little light bulb that just came on right now too. And it's a little hard for me to talk about it only because he just passed away, but it would probably be my family. And there wasn't a lot of support in the sense of, did they understand what engineering was? They understood what the word was, engineering. So I kind of fit the typical stereotyped low-income family child. And we're 3 daughters, but out of the 3 daughters, one of us became the brother, and that happened to be me. So I was the child that would go outside and try to go under the hood with my dad. And mom cleaned houses growing up. So all we understood was hard labor, vacations, any type of spring break, winter break, summer breaks, it was cleaning someone else's house. And it's like, so that is what gave me more or less the motivation to pursue engineering. I didn't grow up with Legos, but I did grow up with dirt and making mud pies and making structures with mud. So that is how I joined the shop classes in high school. So as far as background, when it comes to technical, that's what kind of guided me towards engineering. But when it comes to personal life, then when it would be the struggles of growing up and knowing that one of the 3 daughters had to figure out how to provide for the rest of the family. And then once I attended Fresno State, it was always the back and forth shaking, just because, as one of you mentioned, math wasn't my strongest suit, but grammar also isn't my strongest suit either. So I am horrible at spelling, but I am better at math, but it still comes a little hard. So there was endless amounts of times of where I remember being in the classroom or taking an exam and not passing it. Remember my first calculus test, I received it and I didn't pass. And it's like I started crying in class, and I realized that thereon, I never looked at my grades on a test until I was alone. My first engineering exam, I turned in a blank exam. with only my name because I felt really nervous that I couldn't do it. I doubted the background, whether I had it in me or not, to be able to finish a degree that no one in my family had. As a little girl, I never really thought I can do it. Like maybe some of you in classrooms right now don't know whether you belong in engineering or not, but it's called perseverance. And that is what got me into the major and helped me finish it, but also being that little brother role as a problem solver. This is why I'm good at it too. And it's like engineering is not just about math. And if you understand science and social skills, it's really big. I still fidget. I'm fidgeting with my hands right now. You can't see. Big groups are still hard for me, but it is an ever endless skill that I have to learn, and we will continue learning. Soft skills are still really crucial in engineering. But that is basically what has helped me prepare. It's more of the endurance and finding something that I can problem solve. And unlike other things in life, engineering always has an answer.
Thank you for sharing. That was very lovely. Thank you. That also is a very good segue into our next question. What was your classroom experience going through the engineering major? I think we hear a lot about how it's a very male-dominated field, and we're trying to get more women into the field. And so just if you want to talk about what your classroom experience was like and how you kind of dealt with that. We could start with Kiana, if she'd like to go into that a little bit. Or a little.
I guess so. Yeah, when I went to Fresno State, there was definitely a noticeable difference between the amount of guys and the amount of girls in the classes. But I never really saw it as a problem or let it negatively affect my education. I kind of just like tried to go about things as I usually did. But then I guess one kind of funny tidbit on that is that at least at one point in my college career, I was studying in the ASCE room and it was like packed with people. And I didn't realize till I was leaving that I was the only girl in the room out of like, I don't know, over 20 people that were just studying. And so I guess that kind of shows that I didn't really take, what's the word? I don't know, let it negatively affect me or get overwhelmed by like the gender differential or anything like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's always a interesting feeling when you kind of look up and you're like, oh, whoa, it is just me. So if Cami would like to go into her classroom experience a little bit more.
To that point, yeah, I definitely, it's a little bit of a shift from high school or the rest of school. But when I saw this question, something actually came to mind from a panel that I sat in on and listened to when I was at Fresno State. And I think at the time, I see Dr. Stillmaker's on the call, but it was like Dr. Stillmaker, Dr. Nazari, and a couple of other professors. And I can't remember if it was Dr. Stillmaker or Dr. Nazari who said this, but one of them mentioned that being the only girl in the room, they felt that a lot of the times either themselves or the other girls in the room usually kind of felt like they had something to prove almost. And so they ended up just being like top scorers on tests and things like that. And that really struck me and was very motivating. And so I think in the classroom experience, not that I felt like I had to prove anything, but I felt like I wanted to do very well being one of the only females present because I wanted to represent well. Another thing that I found myself doing is anytime there was a female professor, because it's similar, right? It's a male-dominated field, both on the student side and in the professor side. I found that like I'd figure out what classes the female professors were teaching that semester, and I'd just be like, okay, yeah, I'll take that one, or okay, I'll take that one. Because if there aren't that many girls in the classroom, being able to look up and then see that the person leading the classroom is also a lady was always really nice. So, and at Fresno State, that was totally possible, at least within electrical engineering. I had the opportunity to take multiple classes. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing. So Becca, if you'd like to go into what your classroom experience was like for your major.
Sure. So when I was in school, it was not uncommon for me to be the only female in the class. But it wasn't really something that I noticed until somebody would point it out. And they would go, Becca, you're the only girl. And I go, oh, I am. You know, it didn't really matter to me, because when you go into the classroom, you're not watching your classmates, you're watching your teacher. That's what you're there for, right? And you sit there for an hour or 2 or 3, however long the class is. And when you're done, you leave. Now you have your study groups, and, you know, other people in the class, they're, you know, they want to form study groups. They want to have little cliques, and that's fine. And those people are generally guys, because that's who's there. And I was never excluded because I was a female from anything, but I guess I didn't feel like females were missing, because there's also a bunch of women all over the rest of the campus. So it's not like when you go to college, you're never ever going to see a girl again, because they're everywhere. And you can join clubs and teams and sororities and have that engagement as well without, you know, missing out on that. Like when I was there, I was on the Fresno State women's rugby team. So I had girls that I would hang out with there, and then I'd have guys in the classroom. So I just don't know that it was much of that there was much of a miss on that in terms of the balance.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Haya, would you like to go into how your classroom experience was for your major?
So definitely, like all the other ladies mentioned, I don't think I was ever the only girl in my classes. With civil engineering, there's a little bit of a higher percentage of women in civil engineering than most other engineering majors. So I was never the only female, but multiple times I would be the only one in that group project. And it was challenging at times, but at the same time, it's something that I just look past and work with. And then something I really like about being a smaller percentage is that the girls that were together, so my friends that were in my classes, we automatically became really good friends. And up until now, we talk to each other all the time. We hang out. We're really close to each other, and we just started taking classes together. So we ended up taking most of our classes together. So there was at least one other friend in my classes when I was taking them, and the bond that we created is unforgettable.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing. I'm going to pass over to Charlotte, because I think she has some like good stories about her group classroom experience, or making groups within her classroom. But if you'd like to share your classroom experience for your major.
Yeah, sounds great. To be honest, in high school, I had lots of friends, but never that close that my friends from college, from Fresno State. Just an idea, we have reunions every holiday during December, for example. That's how close we became with my friends that I met in Fresno State. My best friend, actually, it's my classmate, Catherine Lord. She's a mechanical engineer too. So when we travel around different places together. So I didn't see an obstacle. Being minority wasn't for me a deal breaker, because like you can hear my accent, I'm a minority anyways everywhere I go. So there were enough female engineers in mechanical engineering. I think it's growing. I think a lot of girls are start like, okay, mechanical engineering is something there. And we had, I believe, a good group size of females. And when I was in Fresno State, so I didn't feel like I was the only one. We have really good class size. Other thing is some of the classes I took some classes with female professors, and that really helped me because I was looking for and said like, okay, we have 3, 4 that I was like, oh wow, if they're there teaching, they got PhDs and everything, I definitely can do this. So they were a role model to me. So definitely I didn't have any issues with gender. Maybe it's the way I am. I like talking to anybody. It doesn't matter who is the person or where they come from. So yeah, I came when I first started engineering, I didn't pay attention that much to the gender inequality type of thing. So yeah, like I mentioned, my best friends are from college. We had a really good group of group studies, for example. And something interesting is that when I was at the library, we were studying. I started the first semester, for example, I didn't know anyone. And sitting in the library, I started seeing people leaving around 7 p.m. and then leaving more. And then I started seeing familiar faces sitting around all the time. And then you see in the classroom, and then we end up everybody know each other. So yeah, it was a wonderful.
Thank you for sharing. Alejandra, if you'd like to go into what your classroom experience was like for your major when you were at Fresno State.
I might be the only odd one that fully noticed the difference. So I was actually trying to think about it. Why did I feel so much difference while everyone else didn't fully, like it didn't make them stand back the minute they walked into a classroom? All I can think of is because not only am I only have sisters, but my whole family's just women. The only men we have are the uncles. But I do remember walking in when I fully went into the engineering and construction classes and stepping back a little bit, having to take a deep breath and learning to feel comfortable with it. As semesters went by, I started feeling a lot more confident. I felt worthy of being in the classes, that I can also get a degree, and that's what made me feel a lot more comfortable. But in the beginning, I did feel outcasted. I did feel, oh, I'm only one of 2 or one of 3 women in the classroom. And it took me a while to get out of that mentality. I did have times where in certain classes, I remember it was every Wednesday, I would come out crying, and it's like because I thought that I couldn't do it. And it took me a while to shake it out, and it just doesn't just happen in a classroom, it happens in the real world. And it's like where you have to learn to establish, put your foot down and show that you're also smart, that you can also do things. And once I realized that I had to figure out how to find that self-confidence within myself, and that's when I finally sat in a classroom, looked up, and didn't matter if it was all guys or if it was all women. It's like I finally felt like I was an equal, but it did take time for me to build that confidence, just like it takes time to reestablish in other aspects of life as well.
Yeah, that's really good advice about transferring that over. And we do have a note from the chat that you did make your way and you put your foot down, and you ended up receiving 8 outstanding and lucrative job offers weeks before you were graduating. So congratulations on that. It's just really amazing to see how everyone it goes into a classroom and interprets what they're seeing. And so moving on from the classroom, you graduated, now you're in the workforce. So how do you feel that your workforce experience has compared to your classroom experience so far, as far as like the culture, the people, just kind of your mental state? We could start with Charlotte if she'd like to go into that.
Yes, I can start. And I can see the difference though. When I was in college, I felt more like that I don't have to prove much because all of us, we were learning at the same time. But when you're in the workforce, like you're in a company, working in a company, you do have to prove yourself. You have to make sure that you're running the right numbers, that your designs work, that you're providing the best to the customers. So it's different. It's completely different in my case. I have an excellent group, a team, the team that I am right now, very helpful. This is my second year working at John Deere. I was part of the education, the engineering development program for a year and a half. And then I moved to this job, this position. I got the opportunity to look into different groups in short period of time. And I see the difference in depending the culture or depending the place where they come from. I work with people from Germany, India, Mexico, and you see the difference. Now in the team that I am, very, very supportive. If I have questions, they're always there for me. But in prior teams, depending the complexity of the project, it can be very tedious in a way. Now, like I said, I never went in college. When I was in college, I was enjoying the experience, learning, get to do things that I love. And I have the support from my friends and from my professors. Going to John Deere is a wonderful company, very helpful, lots of resource, but still we have to provide our best. We have to give the best of us because the customers deserve that. So I can see a little bit the difference. There's only two in the United States lady engineers of a team of, I believe, 12, 10 are male. Very helpful, but sometimes, like you're saying, it can be very intimidated because you have to prove a little more, like Alejandra was mentioning, like, oh, maybe I don't know much about what they know. Also, how many years they've been an engineer. Also, as a new engineer, can be a little bit overwhelming compared to someone who's been an engineer for 15 years or 20. But that also gives you more motivation to keep learning, because in engineering, you have to constantly learn and you cannot stop. It's a learning, it's a career where definitely you have to love education, learn more applications and stuff. But I'm very happy with the decisions of working for John Deere. And yeah, that's my experience. That's what happened.
Thank you for sharing. Haya, would you like to go into a little bit about what you've seen from your work experience so far and how it compares to like your classroom experience?
So kind of going off of the last question about the percentage of females, I still see that within the work field. In the current office I work at right now, on my team, there's only one other female engineer. And in my previous workplace, I was the only one between, I think there were about 15 to 20 people. So I was the only female. It plays a huge role though, depending on the different companies. I noticed between both companies I worked at, it's night and day difference. So yes, there's only one other female here, but I feel completely comfortable. I love working here. I love the work environment I'm at. Whereas my old company, I was the only female, and it was just very unprofessional. The men I worked with were super unprofessional, so I wanted to leave as soon as possible. So I do see some struggles where females could potentially have in this field, depending on the environment they're in. So yeah, like I said, right now I'm at a very good company where everybody I work with are great, and I absolutely love it. But yeah, I think that's it.
That's amazing. So excited for you and your feeling comfortable within your workforce. So Alejandra, would you like to go over how your work experience compares to your classroom experience?
Sorry, I started multitasking with work too. Okay, so there isn't a lot of difference. There's difference in the sense of you do have to work a little harder sometimes just to gain that respect when you walk into a meeting. But it also depends on the team that you're working in, the company you're working with, and also the community that you're working under. So some teams are a little bit more modern and other teams are still a little bit more old-fashioned. So it's what I was saying earlier, that you kind of have to learn to develop your soft skills, because the soft skills is something that we're not taught when we're in school. It is something that you're taught with. We're applied to learn technical. We're learned to do math problems. We learn to solve. We learn to understand why things fall apart and why things hold up. But something that we do have to learn is soft skills. And if you're already in competitions and extracurricular activities, and that's where you start developing those. But by all means, especially the ones that are still in high school, I would encourage to work on those, learn to work with teams and understand different personalities, different ethnicities, different just backgrounds in general. That's what I've noticed that makes the biggest difference walking into a classroom. It's not even so much the gender, it's understanding why people react a certain way, or why you have to work a little harder with one person than another to gain their respect and gain that credibility. Something I've also learned is just because we have a degree, it doesn't mean that when we walk into a classroom, we're automatically going to be given the respect. So you will have to try a little harder, but it's also very rewarding and super fulfilling when you walk into a meeting or when you walk into a team and they're underestimating you because of the way you look or the way you sound or whatever it is. But once you show that you're not just a degree and you're not just a woman, you're all of the above, and that makes you even stronger. And you finally get those emails and those text messages that say, hey, sorry I underestimated you. You're one of the ones that works the hardest in the team and solves the issues the fastest or has all of your stuff under control. That is the most rewarding messages and text messages that you'll receive. You might have to put in a little bit extra tears, but it's worth it.
Thank you for sharing. Cami, if you would like to go into how your work experience is comparing to your classroom experience so far.
Yeah, sure. So for me, I work at a Bay Area based company. So to some extent, and this is kind of a silly comparison, but when you go to college, in-person college, there seems to always be free pizza like everywhere. So you never pay for lunch. And I pleasantly was surprised when I started at my job and there's free lunch, like not every single day, but many of the days. So luckily that kind of, not necessarily classroom, but school experience versus work experience was pretty similar. One stark difference is I started just after all the pandemic stuff started. So the number of people I like physically see when I'm working is very minimal now. We still get free lunches just through DoorDash instead of in person. But yeah, so that's been a big shift is, working from home. But maybe for many of you, the working from home versus the classroom experience will be a very similar thing as we get into like hybrid work or whatever the future of work looks like. On the contrary to the male-dominated field, I'm very fortunate. I work in a group that is not a majority women, but approaching a majority women. So a little bit different than the classroom experience for me there, but work and school, they require a lot of the same of you, right? You're constantly trying to meet some list of expectations. So school definitely prepared me for that aspect. But yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. Becca, if you would like to go into your work versus classroom experience.
Yes. So far since I've graduated, I've worked in 4 different industries. I've worked in energy with General Electric. I worked in aerospace at Edwards Air Force Base. I worked in medical at a company in Fresno, and now I work in agriculture. And at these companies, some of them were Fortune 500 companies, were big companies. Some of them were little companies. I currently work at a startup, so it's a very little company. And out of those 4 jobs, half of them, I was the only female engineer at the place that I worked at, and the other half I was not. There was other ones. Kind of like Haya mentioned earlier, sometimes regardless of how many women are in the environment, it can be a healthy environment or it can be an unhealthy environment. There's a stereotype that when you graduate, you're gonna graduate with your engineering degree, you're gonna go into the workforce, you're gonna go to this job, and it's gonna be nothing but old grumpy men who are telling you that you need to be at home, watching your kids, baking cookies, doing all of that, right? And it's like, no, there are some people like that left. That's an older generation thing, but women are really flooding into the workforce and the engineering really faster than probably ever before. And it's changing the dynamic. So when you get into a healthy environment, a workplace that has somewhere that's healthy and values women just as equally as men, then that's a good place to be. My husband is also an engineer, also a Fresno State graduate. And we understand that like the way that he thinks is different than the way that I think. And so we always try to explain to people, that men are very linear thinkers. Men like to think, first I get up in the morning and I'm going to put my socks on. Then I'm going to put my shoes on. Then I'm going to go outside, and women are like, global thinkers. So we're going, well, what's the temperature today? Is it 110 degrees outside? Maybe that's going to play into whether or not I'm going to put shoes on or flip-flops on. And we like to do the global big picture thinking. And so I explain this because as companies kind of also start to understand the value of what women bring to the table versus what men bring to the table, they start to value that and integrate that better into the teams. And we're kind of at a point, I think, in the industry where that's happening. Teams, they're valuing women like they've never valued them before. So I don't know that it's completely common at this point to go into a workplace and be mistreated or have things happen that aren't good, because the company does want to protect you. And for the most part, your coworkers, they want to be professional. They want to have a good environment. No one shows up to work that I'm aware of and says, I want to work in a negative work environment. That's what I want. Everyone shows up, they want to have their friends. There's always going to be people you like, just like in the classroom, you've got people you like, and then you've got people that you maybe don't like quite as well, but they're still there and you work with them. And sometimes you're assigned to work on a team with them. And when you are, you do your best, and then you're glad when that's done and you move on. And I also wanted to point out too, just because it's some of those jobs that I was the only female engineer, it didn't mean necessarily that I was the only female, period. Although as some jobs that was true. Sometimes I was the only female, but there's other departments as well. There's logistics, there's finance, there's HR, there's production. There's going to be other women, even if they're not necessarily engineers. So again, it's not like you're necessarily alone, because you are friends with other people too.
Thank you for sharing. And lastly, Kiana, if you would like to compare your work experience to your classroom experience so far.
Okay, yeah. So going on top of like what Charlotte was saying about being like really intimidated at the beginning of working, I can definitely relate to that. But then like one of the things that I learned was that like you're not expected to know everything. Everybody has a lot to learn. And so the main thing is to like ask questions. Even if you think it's a stupid question, it's a lot better to ask and get the right answer and do it correctly than to not know and start going off in the wrong direction and then not knowing that it was wrong until like way further away. And so it's good to just like, don't be afraid to ask questions and that kind of stuff. And then like relating back to the whole gender male dominated part, personally, I've been pretty lucky. I've been at the same company ever since I graduated from Fresno State. And I haven't really had difficulties being a female engineer in the workforce. And because like in my office, my coworkers know what I'm capable of, and like they respect my knowledge and abilities, but they're also like open to answering any questions that I have, and they don't like put me down for asking something. But then also a kind of cool stat is that our Fresno office bridge department is 100% female. It's only a couple of us, but it's all women, which is kind of cool because there's not that many outside of us in the company. But yeah, and then I guess another part is the environment that they were talking about, where like in the office it's one way, but then I also go out into the construction sites in the field, which is a lot different. And I think it goes kind of back to what Alejandra was saying about like confidence and that kind of thing. At first it was little tiny me going out trying to talk to these guys and tell them when they're constructing something wrong. And it's very difficult to try to do that, especially if you're not sure of yourself and you don't have any confidence. And so like one of the big things that helped me get over that hump was one of the higher up people on site was just like, you need to just like tell them what's wrong and they'll fix it. And I don't know, it helped me when he told me that I just need to assert myself and just know that it needs to be fixed, tell them to fix it and they'll fix it, and don't keep doubting yourself and questioning things. And so, yeah, just gaining the confidence really helped with the communication and being able to effectively communicate on the job site. And so, yeah, I guess that's pretty much it.
Thank you for sharing. And so we're on to our last question now, just kind of tying into the workplace. So we talked a little bit about like what your experience is like, but I think I'm interested, but I'm sure everyone would be interested to know too, like what does your typical day look like? Like what's like kind of like a quick breakdown of what you typically do for your job, like through your major. And so we can start with Haya, if you'd like to go into that a little bit.
So my typical day actually starts at 7 a.m. I work from 7 till 4. And I come in, I do a lot of drafting on AutoCAD. And I also use another software called GIS, where I also input a lot of data. A lot of plan review. I do work for the city of Clovis, so we do get a lot of plans submitted to the city. So I review the plans and make sure they're up to standards. I also put together specs for projects that are being done around the city. Yeah, I can't think of what else. But yeah, a lot of making sure whatever is being done in the city is up to code and up to standards.
That's awesome. So Alejandra, if you'd like to go into what a typical day looks like for you.
Okay, so now with being at the high-speed rail, just like any other job, every day is different. Sometimes I'll strategize while I'm still asleep, because I still do that. And I wake up and my day turns out nothing like the way I strategized. But in general summary, if I were to have to stereotype it, then it would be a lot of coordination between contractors, designers, and at the same time with my own team. And some days we review change orders, which is basically costs that are being added into the project, a lot of problem solving, and a lot of meetings. And generally, it's sometimes we'll get pulled into the field. So I'm not a designer, but I do help coordinate. And there are times where, as an owner's rep, then I have to go out into the field and put the interest of the authority first. So sometimes I do get stuck having to run meetings or coordinate with the designers and balance ideas back and forth. So that's basically what my every day right now. It's more or less talking and being in design meetings and with the contractors at the same time. So like there's actually a meeting going on right now that I'm supposed to be in. One of my coworkers is covering me. But just so I'll give an example of what that meeting would be like. Basically, we have an issue out in the field right now, and people involved would be a designer right now, which in this case would be like Kiana, would be part of my designer that would be in that meeting. And we also have the contractor out there, which is the one that's building, and then it's us representing the owner side. So between all three of us, we have to figure out a solution to be able to proceed with the drawings. That's it.
Thank you for thank you for sharing. We'll segue into that. What would Kiana's typical day-to-day experience look like for her work?
So I guess my days aren't super duper exciting, or my typical days that are in the office. Most of the time I'm at a computer, either at home or at my home office or in the office now, trying to get more into the office now that we can. But yeah, so I do a lot of like design calculations, quantity calculations, run different models or write reports. That's one big thing that people say that they do engineering because they don't like to write. But then one kicker is that you have to write a lot. But so we end up spending a lot of time writing reports and that kind of thing too. But yeah, so a lot of my typical days are in the office, but then I've been pretty lucky to get some inspection in too. So I get to get out of the office and go out in the field. And I've been doing formwork inspections at a dam. So they're pouring concrete, so I have to make sure that they constructed the formwork up to the plans that they have for the formwork. And so to make sure that the concrete doesn't come out of it and spill everywhere. So yeah, I've been enjoying getting to go out in the field a little bit more with that. And yeah, I guess I could show a quick picture of a few projects if this is the time to do that. These are just a few. Oh, just kidding. Oh, why isn't it showing? Sorry, that's my background. Maybe later I'll be able to share my screen with the picture.
It's showing selected projects right now.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not showing it to me. Cool.
Oh.
So yeah, these are the top left is the dam that I was talking about that I'm doing formwork inspections at. And then the one in the middle is there were like 26 bridges or something like that. As a company, we split it among a few people, and we also were working with other companies because there were so many bridges in West Virginia to get them upgraded. And then on the top right is a storm damage repair site. So we did retaining walls there, soldier pile walls, because the storms made the road slip out, so they needed to have a way to hold it all back up. And then bottom left is it's in Porterville, J Street Bridge. They widened it to like over double the width, and that was my first concrete pour I got to go to. That was exciting. Very early morning or late night. It started at midnight. And then the 3rd Street Bridge on the bottom right here is in San Francisco. Some people may have seen it. It's over by oh gosh, is it Oracle Park, the Giant Stadium? And so yeah, it's kind of cool because it opens up and lets boats through, and so we rehab that project too. So here's just a little glimpse at some of the projects I've gotten to work on. So that's it.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. If you want to go to Becca, just what like a typical day looks like for you for your work.
Yes. So currently I work at a company called Soldierfly Technologies. And at this company, we grow bugs. And it's not something that like a normal, I guess, engineer would do. This is a newer industry. Basically, we grow bugs, specifically the black soldier fly. And it sounds like a housefly, but it's not. Like it looks like a black wasp, but it acts like a ladybug. It doesn't bite, it doesn't sting, it doesn't carry diseases or anything like that. But there's a protein problem in the world where by 2050, basically the amount of meat that people are going to be trying to consume at that point due to the population increase, there isn't enough land to grow food to feed the animal to get the meat for the people. Okay, so this is like the protein problem. We need to find a way to get more protein. So the answer is insects. So this black soldier fly insect is ideal for that application because they can break down just about anything. They're very clean and they're native to the Valley, and they work really well. So that's what my company does. So because of that, we have partners in our company that are on the East Coast, and we make calls with people all over the world. So sometimes we have meetings that are not in traditional business hours. In addition to that, our flies are considered basically mini livestock. And so when there's a problem at our facility at 2 a.m, we go to the facility at 2 a.m because they are alive. And if they die, there goes our colony, right? So we're kind of on call because of that. But that being said, my job is not at all repetitive. We do different stuff every day. So for instance, yesterday, I showed up and I built a custom exhaust fan shroud that I had to install on one of our buildings. I harvested insect eggs, millions of them. I fed and counted millions of other bugs. And I did data analysis on feed trials that we're doing because we thought that that would be a valuable thing to do. And then the day before that, I wrote a federal grant application. We shipped eggs out all over the country. I worked on analyzing light wavelength output versus insect mating production. And I wrote a program to correlate the data and analysts between all of the data that we're collecting. So just between 2 days, you can see like my day is nowhere near the same every single day. But that is kind of different being at a startup. Generally, the jobs I've had before, they're generally jobs that I would do during the daytime. The only one that would be different is when I was at the Air Force Base. We would do flight testing at 2, 3, 4 in the morning. It would be whenever the airspace was available. So you'd have to be there for that. But aside from that sort of work, it was generally a set schedule, like a 6 to 5 kind of range, somewhere in there.
Thank you for sharing. Charlotte, if you would like to share a little bit about what a typical day looks like for you.
So I normally work from the office. Right now I'm at home, but because my job as a data analytics quality engineer required for me to be at the factory shop floor, I have to be at home. I work at the factory. Normally start at 7:30. I can, if depending the meeting that I have, sometimes I have to work a little early because we have different teams from different parts of the world, and India tends to be late when it's for us 7:30, so they need to meet with us a little early, around 5, 6 in the morning. So it really depends. My job is to make sure that we're getting all the torque, speed, testing data from our engines on check. So regulation-wise, we have to have standards, and we have to make sure that those engines, when they leave our facility, are great for customers. I'm the data analytics for the factory, so therefore I have to make sure that we have the newest software for every line, or for testing, for assembly, for disassembly, different areas. I work in machine learning. I'm right now at the process of becoming a machine learning ambassador for Blue River. So I would do a lot of coding, even though I'm a mechanical engineer. That's one of the things I do. Also, like I say, make sure we get into the latest software for factories, running different testing for engines, speed, torque, you name it. When we run an engine to make sure it's working correctly, it has to be different. They undergo to different testing that I know. So I have to run it, make sure that the engine is good. And remember, we run thousands per month. So we have to do different correlations, statistical studies. And I love this job. And this is something that I started liking when I started working with Dr. Steelmaker in one of our, so I started like, oh, I think I like the job. So and then that's what I started. I'm getting my master's in data science and analytics, high performance computing, because I started liking that from college. So yeah, that's one of the things. Others, if I have to help with analyzing failure cause, I need to make sure that we have the right data and tackle that as soon as we get a engine that is not working properly. So that's why I believe that as an engineer, we have to make sure that in my position that we are very, that our calculations are precise, and it requires a discipline in a way to keep, because if we work for construction and for agriculture, so if we have a combine in the middle of somebody during the harvesting season, and the combine is broken in the middle of the field, it's money that they're losing. So we don't want that. We don't want our farmers to lose money, and also we want to provide the best service to them. And engines are very important. I work with engines, transmissions, drivetrain for transmissions, and hydraulics.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And then we have Cami, if you would like to share a little bit about what your day-to-day kind of looks like for your work.
Yeah, sure thing. So I'm a power engineer. There's a couple of different aspects to that. Similar to many others who have mentioned, a good portion of my day is spent on a computer. That can involve reviewing schematics, looking at like CAD files or ECAD files. So looking at what makes a PCB. A very unexpected part of the day now is with all the chip shortages that have been affecting everything that everybody buys that's electronic. I found that I do a lot of part comparison. But yeah, typically in the morning, I'll wake up, make some coffee, walk around with my puppy, then start meetings and have meetings, work on the computer for a while. Then I'm big into getting outside. So sometimes I'll take a meeting from like my back deck and I'll walk back and forth on the back deck while talking to people. On other days, I occasionally will go down to San Jose and go into our labs. On those days, I try to take no meetings because I think it's pretty important to be present and looking at and full attention on what we're trying to fix or what we're trying to address. So lots of communication, lots of shared information in my day-to-day, and lots of simulation or design type stuff.
That's awesome. Thank you. And so those were all of our predetermined questions. And so we did have 2 questions that were asked in the chat during the presentation. If our panelists just wanted to go over it a little bit quickly, I know this is getting a little close to when the end of the presentation will be. But the first question is for Cami, and it says, why is electrical engineering the most difficult?
So I'll preface and say, I think that many engineering majors will say that their major is the most difficult. We're all doing lots and lots and lots of studying. One of the reasons why I've heard in the past that electrical engineering is one of the most difficult, and I think maybe computer engineering is approaching this too, but it's so theoretical, or you can't see necessarily what's happening. You can't track down every single electron. And because of that, it makes things a bit more theoretical, or a bit more, you have to come up with a mental picture, and that can be taxing. A lot of the times in electrical engineering, we'll make a comparison to something that is physical. So with one of the basic things that we learn with circuits is to compare it to like the flow of water. So yeah, electrical engineering is difficult because you have to do a lot of the math. The math never leaves. It's always in even the upper division classes, and it's very theoretical. So, but magical in that too, right? How does the light turn on when you flip a switch? So.
Yeah, that's so true. It's always very exciting to see your projects kind of like come to life at the end. And so our second question is, what is one thing that surprised you or you learned when you all started your first job as an engineer? Not sure if there's someone who's very passionate about this or has some kind of like strong experience that they had from their first engineering position?
I guess I'll go first. My first engineering job or position was, I was an intern while I was going to Fresno State. And I guess, oh gosh, what was the main thing that I learned was that you need a lot of AutoCAD experience, at least for civil engineering interns. And you don't really, or at least when I went to Fresno State and took like the one AutoCAD course we had to take, I didn't really learn that much. But then kind of like I was saying earlier, just everybody is really willing to help you out and teach you things when you're fresh into your career. And so I learned a lot about AutoCAD and how to draft everything up and become more efficient pretty quickly onto that first internship.
Okay, I want to go next. I think the thing that surprised me the most when I started engineering was that it's okay to say, I don't know. Everyone graduates and they think that I'm an engineer now, I have to know all the answers. Everyone thinks that I have everything because I just graduated. And that's not true. You know, when you go in, your company wants to teach you mostly anyways, because they kind of want you to do it their way and they want you to get acclimated to their culture and stuff. But there's so much pressure that you put on yourself that I took a class on this, I should know the answer. And you went to college to learn how to learn. And when you get into the workplace, especially because now it's going to be a specialized thing. Like my first job, I worked at General Electric on wind turbines. We didn't have a class specifically on wind turbines and mechanical engineering. Hard to believe, but we just didn't do that. So when I went in, you know, they're going, this is a machine head, this is a hub, this is this. And I'm like, oh, okay, but I didn't know that. In fact, even when I went to my second job, I was interviewing to be an aerospace flight test engineer at Edwards Air Force Base. I was at the interview that I was an hour late for because I got stuck at the security gate on the Air Force Base. They wouldn't let me on the base, you know? And so I'm an hour late. And finally I get there and the guy doesn't have much time. And he goes, do you know what flutter is? And I'm going, I took a class on this. It was in vibrations, but I don't know that I have a good enough idea to explain this to somebody in a way that would make me sound like I'm a competent person. So I'm thinking this really quickly. And I just go, no, I don't. And I still got the job, you know, to be an aerospace flight test engineer specializing in flutter that I told them I didn't know what it was. They don't expect you to know. It's okay. So don't feel like you have to say yes every time. It's okay.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to share any things that surprised them about their first engineering job?
I can go next. So I'll approach it a little bit more of advice versus what fully surprised me. So I don't know if you guys remember, but in the beginning I said I started Fresno State as a civil engineering. Eventually I decided to try to do a double major, but in between the changes of doing the double major, Dr. Nuna might remember this. I remember rattling everyone's door. But I did an internship in construction, which made me realize that construction is the route I wanted to end up in. So for the ones that are nervous or don't know if you could do internships yet or not, do them as soon as you can, because they do give you a little idea into the world that you're going to be stepping into. And whether you're between construction management or civil engineering, it'll give you a little bit of that taste to understand which route you want to go. Can't really speak for electrical or mechanical. I did take electrical, and I can say I did not pass that class. And that's how I knew I was not in electrical. But the one things that I really got out of that first internship is the challenges. So I got a little taste of everything, a little bit of taste of being one of the only women on the team. I got to experience a little bit of the eye look from head to toe. And sorry, before I continue, I did my internship in construction management. And so I was out in the field. But what I did take the most is, and I know not a lot of you speak Spanish, but the ones that do, use it to your advantage. it works wonders. And it's like stepping into that field, being the only woman, and especially when you first graduate, you're green. And that's a term that's going to be used a lot. They reference it as you really don't know anything yet. You're just out of school, you're a complete sponge. But that was my biggest lesson learned going in, because it wasn't the actual team that helped me grow. It was the field. It was putting on the hard hat and the shoes and going out into the field and getting to know the workers, the actual crews, approaching them in a manner of, I'm not here to criticize your work. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to learn. If I noticed that they were doing something wrong, it was can you help me understand? Can you explain to me why? And once you built that relationship, they opened up and tried to teach you everything that they knew. And that was one of the biggest lessons for me. It was we can learn everything in school. We can learn how to read drawings. We can learn how to use AutoCAD. We can learn everything and all of the above. But getting your hands dirty, it's a very different application from what we learn in school and what we do in the office to actually seeing it get built. So that's kind of what I would say was the biggest eye-opener, seeing the struggles, but also at the end of the internship, being able to say I was part of that courthouse. And it's like, and every time I drive through the 99 and see the courthouse, I remember that was my first internship. So don't be nervous. That's basically what I'm trying to say.
Can I jump in and add something there? So one of the things that surprised me in my first internship or first job was the level of projects that they let interns and students and new hires work on. So right away, for instance, when I was at Toyota, I was like in new cars and 2021 type cars, making decisions that were going to impact then down the road the cars that my parents bought, right? So I still get questions today about the products because I got to decide some of the stuff that went into it, even as an intern. And now, although it's not my first job, at my current job, being a younger engineer or newer engineer, they still let me work on things that, I don't know, just the budgets and the scales of what we get to do is really, really cool. And the impact and influence that we get to have is awesome. So at the beginning, Haley mentioned, I work in a power group, so powering the internet. 80% of the world's internet traffic goes through a Cisco box, and there's less than like 1,500 people, less than 15 people on my team that work on the power circuits that power all of that infrastructure, all of that equipment. So it's pretty cool the impact you can have as an engineer.
I would like to share something real quick, but I'm with her. When I started, I was expecting, they're probably gonna give me some type of project that is going to be kind of medium, not something very like powerful, right? And as soon as I get to work, I have projects that were very important for the factories and or design wise or stuff like that. And I'm like, wow, I really have a good project or a good opportunity to show my skills. This is something that happened during my internship. So I was like, wow, I can definitely help this team. And I think my short 3 months work will be, it will be there for many, many years, hopefully, right? So, and then as a new engineer, the opportunity to have those projects that make the difference, help you boost your self-esteem a little bit and say like, oh, okay, I'm doing something right. So I was surprised by that.
Thank you for sharing. And then I think Haya was the last one. If you had a little bit that you wanted to add to this question, just real quick, or if everyone else pretty much got it. Okay, I think Haya mentioned earlier that she might have had to step out. And so we're gonna have to end it there. Thank you, everyone. Oh, sorry. Hi. Yes. So we're going to end it there. Thank you for all your questions. Thank you, panelists, and congratulations on your outstanding professional careers. Thank you, everyone, again for joining us for this inspirational and informational talk. A reminder, please tune in to the next LCOE Tech Talk in the month of March, when we will be hosting another inspiring speaker from the Lyles College of Engineering at Fresno State. And we hope that you all have a great day and a great rest of your week.
Hey, Haley, before we actually end the call, there was a question from Taylor asking, how did you find a job or position you liked once you're done with college? I just want to give the same shameless plug to SWE, right? So for myself and probably many of the engineers on this call, I found my internships and my final job by being at a SWE conference. So SWE has career fairs where you get to go into huge, like basically an auditorium or, you know, basketball sized room, conference centers where they have booths for with women recruiters looking for women engineers, open to everybody, but the emphasis is in women engineers. So
Yes, I third that plug for SWE.
yeah.
I would add real quick that for Civils, American Society of Civil Engineers, they do a lot of networking stuff, and then also the student chapter has a annual banquet every year in the fall, and the students are able to submit resumes to a resume book, and those resume books go to all the companies that come to the banquet, and that's actually how I got my first internship. And then my job that I got after that was from the guy that hired me at my internship had switched companies. And so then I went to another company to do bridges then instead of roadways.
Lots of amazing sources. Thank you again, everyone. Thanks for squeezing in that last question. Yes, thank you, panelists, for answering that and giving some good tips about that. So yeah, I'm not sure if Fresno State ends the call or if we do, but thank you again, everyone. We hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, panelists. This is Hernan. Thank you, Becca, Cami, Alejandra, Charlotte, Kiana, and thank you, Haley. Thank you, everybody out in the community for joining us this afternoon. Thank you so much. Have a great week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.